Begin. Welcome everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to actually work with a hybrid Alfresco solution. My name is Michael Katten, and I'm working with Joe and Juan, and each of us will do a little tag team presentation here. So I'll talk for a few minutes, and then Juan and then Joe will talk. So the first thing I wanted to do was to show the process of working with a hybrid Alfresco solution in action. So we're actually going to go to our website, which is open to the world. And what you're seeing here is actually just a list of release notes that we made available for this particular release. And this site has all of our documentation. It has release notes, it has deployment guides, it has help systems, it has hundreds of different documents available, thousands even, 4,000 to be exact. And I'm going to click on one of these. I want the release note for our SIP server product. This is unrehearsed. There we go. What you're seeing now is an HTML file that was delivered straight from the Alfresco cloud without any authentication, made available originally from an enterprise instance. So the person who wrote this release note, and one of the reasons I showed this to you is you can see how many releases we have of this software, just updates it in one location on the enterprise side, and it automatically propagates to an available location on the web. Now you're going to ask, why would you want something like this? Excellent question. All right. So as I said, I'm Michael. Juan and Joe will be talking after me. So let me tell you a little bit about Genesys, and then I'll get to the answer to that question. We are an enterprise software company that makes software for contact centers. You might wonder what a contact center needs software for, but it's actually enormous. It's an enormous collection of servers and components. As I pointed out here, everything from agent desktops to workforce optimization software. We make voice recording software, we make routing software, we make CTI software, it's on and on and on. All of it is infinitely customizable. So there's an enormous amount of documentation that we have to produce. In particular, we have a lot of API references that need to be available to our customers who want to shape the software to their contact center's needs. Additionally, we localize. So I have a team of 45 writers worldwide who are producing content, and we put all of that document content, not our online content, all of our document, our PDFs, our help files, our packaged documentation into an Alfresco repository, which now has 4,000 documents that are constantly being updated. And there are updates across this suite. There are updates daily to any number of the documents. And as I said, it's all done in an enterprise version of Alfresco that's in-house, in our private cloud, behind a firewall. When we started out looking for content management systems, we knew that our particular need would be actually a very small portion of our overall company's need. So with 3,200 employees, only 45 of us have this need to produce content that has to be made available to customers. So we need to produce it in a secure way, get it reviewed, do reps on the drafts of the content, but then we only want to be able to sort of click a button finally when it's ready to go to a customer and have it available. So of our total content in the Alfresco repository, probably only 5% needed to be made available to customers. But that was enough of an issue that we needed to come up with a creative solution. Initially, we had no firewall set up for the Alfresco server. You just had regular authentication. And Riva Solutions, which is one of the Alfresco partners, came up with a nice little delivery mechanism where they use the preview capability in Alfresco to actually deliver content to the web. It was a nice system that they came up with, and ultimately we used that script as a model for what I'm about to show you. Because what happened was our IT department decided that we had to put the enterprise version of Alfresco behind a firewall. And so this made delivery complex. They did not want us to have somebody clicking on the web and allowing a script to go in and pull something from behind the firewall. So what we had to do was devise a system whereby passively something was going to be delivered to the web and then made available for download. And we did that by employing the Alfresco sync capability. So what our writers do is they put their documents in the enterprise version, all of which are set up for automatic synchronization to our cloud site. We have a particular site in the enterprise instance that syncs to a particular site in our cloud instance. And then we use this nice feature that Alfresco has, which is a cloud API, that our developer Juan was able to use to devise a script that would pull content as needed from the cloud. All the while, we're able to retain this content behind the firewall. So we're exporting content from this enterprise version in a secure way because we're selectively doing it on content that we want made available to customers. Here's a little schematic of the architecture. What's interesting is that apparently this is unique. I mean, we think it's sort of an obvious thing. If your customers want to be able to see your content, should be made available. Turns out people are not using Alfresco in this way, and I guess that's why they invited us to give a talk. But you'll note, so here's where all of the work is done. All of the work is done in the enterprise instance on folders that are automatically synced to our cloud repository. And then we run a script that resides here on an external site to pull content there based on the unique ID that every node document is given. So when I clicked on that SIP server release note that you saw, I could have hovered over it and you would have seen the, and Juan will go into details on this, you could have seen the unique ID that is then used to, as a parameter, to pull the content from the cloud. And the nice thing about this is that it's all opaque to customers. They just click on the document they need and they're delivered it in a new tab. We've tried different options, downloading the document, opening in a new window. Opening in the same window, it turns out customers like it in a new tab. And this has been remarkably, well, maybe not remarkably, but very nicely successful. In the last 12 months, we allowed for 145,000 downloads, and we're consistently getting between 3,500 and 4,000 downloads a week. Of our 4,000 total downloadable documents. And so it's interesting, and Joe will talk a little bit about this, but it's been very available. There's almost been no outages. We get a lot of traffic. I mean, in one sense, we're a small company. In another sense, we're big enough that 145K downloads is something we have to monitor and make sure that we can deliver. And I just wanted to let people know that, and you may be aware of this, that as you grow a content repository, sure enough, you get this very predictable usability or user ratio. It's like the Amazon model, right? The long tail. Very small portion of your content is used a tremendous amount or is called on a tremendous amount. And still you have to make all 4,000 available because the one time that 3,999th document is downloaded, you want it to be available. Okay, so that was sort of my introductory piece. I'm going to hand it off to Juan, who's going to give you some of the technology behind all this.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan. I'm a technical writer and a tools developer at Genesys. And so, as Michael mentioned, when we first adopted Alfresco, we had a web script from Riva that allowed us to make our documents available to our customers from our website. But then IT got the idea to implement this firewall, so that was going to really rain on our parade. So if we did nothing, that firewall would mean that all our documents would immediately cease to become available to our customers. So around the same time, Alfresco launched the Alfresco Cloud. It was about only a few months removed from when we heard about this firewall. So I had the task of investigating if this solution would actually work for us. Could we use Alfresco Cloud to preserve this seamless access to our documents? And so I took up the task of learning CMIS and a few other technologies. And after a few months, we were able to launch this into production. So this is an overview of our script and what happens when a customer requests a document. So as Michael showed, a customer will come to our website, request a document, and will be served the document from a cloud, from Alfresco Cloud. In Alfresco Cloud, we have all our documents synced from the on-premise version of Alfresco. So in between there, we have this script that acts as a middleman that will fetch the content from Alfresco Cloud and deliver it to the customer. So the customer will click a link on our website, and then that will activate this script. So we have this script, and eventually on our website, we also implemented a cache to speed up document delivery and cut down on API usage. So the customer will request a certain document. The script will connect to the Alfresco Cloud API, and once it's connected, it'll be able to fetch documents and fetch document metadata. So as Michael explained, a small percentage of our documents make up most of our downloads. So there's a chance that the document that's being requested will already be in the cache. So if the document that's requested is in the cache, all we need to do is make sure the most recent document is in the cache. So the script will look at the API, the same document in Alfresco Cloud, and compare it to the document in our cache. If it confirms that it's the most recent document, it'll deliver it to the customer. If it's not the most recent version, the script will fetch the most recent version from the cloud, update the cache, and then deliver that document to the customer. And finally, if it's not in the cache at all, the script will fetch it from the cloud and save it into the cache. And now I'll go over a few more of the implementation details. So here's an example of a link that a customer will click on our website. So here you see this is a node ID, same as you see in Alfresco. Our website runs a MediaWiki, so we use a PHP, and the script itself is implemented as a plugin to MediaWiki. So some initial tweaks we had to make were the cache. Our first implementation of the script did not have a cache, so that implementing the cache really sped things up. And we had we had some problems with CHM files, but when we investigated that ended up being an issue with our server and not with Alfresco. One important thing to point out is that there's an API limit on the Alfresco Cloud API. So for a production application, there's a request quota of 100,000 requests per day, and each document download takes up 1 to 3 requests, depending on whether or not it's cached. So that gives us a little bit over 33,000 downloads per day. And there's a rate limit of 50 requests per second. Finally, another thing I'd like to point out is that we made the decision of using the reference ID from Alfresco, the node ID, as the reference ID. And later on, we did come up with just a few cases where we had some issues that could have been solved if we had not use the reference ID. For example, cases where an action in Alfresco Cloud changes the ID, or where we would want to change it. And here's a sample of the code the code of the script. So you can see it's PHP. We read the document ID, connect to the cloud server using OAuth, and we fetch metadata from the cloud site and compare the timestamp in the cloud to a timestamp saved in our cache. So, as Michael said, the Cloud API has very high availability. We've had few problems with it with it going down. It supports multiple file types, and we've been able to successfully deliver all those file types. And finally, we have a secure document delivery in that we were able to make just a subset of our total documentation available to our customers. And finally, it has a great development community. It has a great development community and good documentation. When I started working on the script, I had a web development experience, and as far as Alfresco went, I had done a few web scripts. So reading the documentation, going to Alfresco meetups, going on the IRC channel, I was able to get a lot of my questions answered, and finally launched this script into production in a relatively fast amount of time. And now I'd like to pass things on to my colleague, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. So when we implemented Alfresco, or shall I say our Genesys IT department implemented Alfresco, we in TechPubs pretty much didn't anticipate having to do any kind of monitoring or administrating for our particular department needs. But then a few months after moving 4,000 plus documents into Alfresco, discovered that it needed a little bit of tender loving care and some regular monitoring. And over the course of a couple of months, discovered that my role as admin for our department broke down to 4 different areas. Most of them are pretty obvious. Alfresco expert, for example. Although I'm not an expert for Alfresco, I would love to be, and I'm continually trying to learn. A part of my job in my department is to learn what Alfresco offers, especially as it rolls out new versions and new features, and to see how we might be able to leverage that for our ever-changing needs in our department and the software industry, which is not untypical. Another part of being an expert is training the users and supporting them as they experience problems, sometimes helping people in other departments when they're having issues or want to know how to do something. But of particular value with respect to that role is translating Alfresco speak to Genesys speak, like talking to our writers about, well, you need to use the reference node ID. You know, I get this blank look like, what the heck are you talking about? So simply say, it's the Alfresco ID. It's like the ID we used to have in our old system, but it's a different ID now. And so giving them a little context and talking to them in a way that makes sense to them definitely helped moving and implementing Alfresco with the entire department. In a small way, I would do quality assurance. Since our Genesys IT department is responsible for upgrading and maintaining the software, I needed to ensure that when they made changes, it would not negatively impact our department. And in a few cases, they did make some changes, and it messed up every sync that we had. No documents were suddenly available, and it was on me to figure out, well, what the heck happened? Eventually discovered, oh, we got the wrong license, and so it broke the link, and all the syncing didn't work anymore. So we would get screaming customers to say, well, where are the documents?
I just need to fix this.
Sure.
I'm trying to record it.
Better? Okay, sorry. Okay, so I would have to test in fact, we're testing currently 4.2, and I had minimally tested it before I came to the conference, and so far the syncing worked correctly. And that's important. The syncing capability is really important for us because customers expect the document immediately available to them when the product is released. And if it's not, we start getting people screaming, like, where's the document? I can't install, I can't upgrade, I can't implement this fix if we don't have the document available. Then as far as monitoring, that's just a daily piece of work that I do, just making sure syncing is working correctly. I do check the Alfresco status site that indicates how well the Cloud API is working. And I also inform our department if there are any issues, so they're aware, just in case they're implementing a document or updating a document that is not showing up in the site. The most important role is acting as tech support for our department. That includes, if there's a problem with syncing or something's going on, I need to investigate, find out if it's on one file or multiple files or a folder, or if it's on Genesys side or if it's on Alfresco side. And that takes time to do that kind of investigation. Up until this past May, when we did some architecture changes, we had some significant outages monthly. And that I couldn't resolve on my own. So what I ended up doing is contacting Alfresco support, and I have to admit that they are absolutely brilliant. They were so available to helping me figure out what was going on and resolving the problem. Willing to set up conference calls, willing to share screens, doing investigation on the side. I can't tell you how important that was to get that resolved quickly, especially when you're hearing customers saying, where's the doc, where's the doc? One thing that was very important for us with respect to working with Alfresco support was providing them with a diagram and an associated Word file that just explained our specific implementation, how we used Alfresco in our department and Genesys. Now, prior to doing that, every time I contacted customer care, I had to explain to the new person, this is how we use Alfresco, this is why this will work, this is why this won't work in resolving a situation. So by creating a diagram and a Word file and attaching it every time I opened a case, it saved a lot of time on my part, it saved a lot of time on Alfresco's side to helping us resolve it as quickly as possible. So a couple things where we typically had problems with, just to give you an idea. We had admin authentication issues, not about customer authentication who were accessing the docs, but about the authentication needed to sync from the prem to the cloud. Turned out, it was on Genesys side, but we didn't know it until later on. Sync pending were issues that are commonly experienced. Every once in a while, we would have the document look like it's synced on the premise side, but actually not be updated in the cloud. Since May, we may have a syncing issue every couple of weeks, 1 or 2 documents, and all can be resolved by just manually syncing the document. So I have to admit, it's been a great relief to not have that to contend with on a regular basis. We did recently have an issue with downloads, but it turned out that the API plan we had was only a 10,000 limit, as opposed to the production plan, which is a 100,000 request limit. So once we changed that, that pretty much resolved that situation. So we use various aspects of Alfresco, but there are some things that you might think that we do use that we, in fact, don't. One of which is the workflows. The processes we use to develop our documentation are pretty intensive and sophisticated, and the bottom line was we didn't have time or resources to dedicate to figuring out how to create our own workflows that would work for us. So that's one thing we don't use. Another is the Alfresco wiki. We just simply needed more extensibility than was available in the Alfresco wiki. Like Michael and Juan said, we use MediaWiki. It's a read-only, so we don't have people actually trying to write our documents, although some days it would be helpful when we are running out of resources. So we go in with MediaWiki for our wiki needs. Then as far as versioning, we version our documents to 7 digits. and the out of the box is 2 digits. And then finally, tags. They don't currently support syncing tags to the cloud. That would be really helpful in leveraging for searching, but we don't have it at this point. So hopefully that'll come in some future release. I was listening when they were talking at one of the sessions about the next cloud release, and it's like, are you going to include tagging? Please include tagging. But anyway, still waiting to see. As far as future plans, obviously continue to investigate and leverage Alfresco's features to see how we might use them. Like I said, the software industry is ever changing. Our company is ever changing, and we need to continue to look at how we might leverage Alfresco's features for what we are trying to do in our company and our department. We also want to implement better search to return better results from Google. Our online documents, Google returns hits on those all the time, and we want to be able to dig into the Alfresco content to be able to include those returns, better returns for that kind of documents, like PDFs and help files and such. And then finally, we want to improve the presentation of Alfresco with how people access our documents. As Juan showed, we have links to each individual document, so a customer clicks the link and they can only see and download that document. One option that we're considering is to be able to offer a drop-down list that would enable them to see collections of documents, so they can see, well, I want this document, but these documents might be of value to us as well. So that's it for us. If you have questions for myself or Juan or Michael, feel free to shout them out. We actually have the mic, so if you want to raise a question, we can.
You can probably just ask it.
But they need to record it.
Oh, they want to record it.
I think, don't count it. There we go.
Thanks. Just a technical detail one. Which of the API bindings did you use? Did you use the Atom? And did you use any client libraries, or did you just go directly at the yourself at the URLs? Okay, good.
Yeah, I had to use the Atom binding because the other REST API doesn't support fetching the documents themselves. Oh,
Got it.
sorry.
I was trying to let you record your response. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, so I used the Atom binding, and I had to use Atom binding because the REST API, which is the other available binding, didn't support fetching and downloading the documents.
You want to grab that? Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on what you're using for workflow and for versioning to accommodate the more robust needs that you had?
The workflow that we use is a process that I and the rest of my group have created. So we're not actually using a workflow through Alfresco. And then as far as versioning, we have our own system. Our software is versioned to 7 digits. So we use our internal systems to call out and freeze the documents at a certain version. In particular for the documents that are like PDF format, we have a version number at the bottom of each document that calls it out.
So for instance, we're not creating the docs in Alfresco. That's another consideration, right? We're creating them outside Alfresco, getting them approved, and only putting them in Alfresco at the time when they're ready to go. Because we use FrameMaker, let's say, and that's not natively supported by Alfresco.
So Alfresco is really just your system of record that you're then using to push the stuff out. It's not actually your authoring system.
Correct. It's our repository, and it makes it available via the syncing. Yeah.
Any other questions? Juan behind you.
Hi. So I'm also a documentation manager in addition to a couple other roles. So just curious, why did you not think of transitioning from chum files to WebHelp so that you can link to WebHelp and just hosting that WebHelp somewhere?
So why didn't we use WebHelp? In other words,
why didn't you use WebHelp instead of I'm assuming they're downloading the chums.
Yeah, well, so most of our repository content is HTML files and PDFs, and then a subset is CHMs. So CHMs is a result of our being an Adobe house, historically not a Microsoft house. So.
You could host the web help version of the Chum online, right?
Well, we don't want that. We ultimately are moving all of our content to online native content. We want to get away from even that model, right? So all of our content ultimately should be adopting what we're saying is every page is page one model. So everything should be cross-linkable. Once you retain a web help paradigm, you're still encasing a discrete set of knowledge and isolating it from other sets of knowledge. And so all of our stuff needs to be cross-referenceable. So in fact, we also have 9,000 pages online that has nothing to do with Alfresco.
Any other questions?
It's just a process question, I guess. You mentioned a couple of these issues or features you'd like to see, like syncing tags, maybe some better handling of the object IDs or something like that. Have you opened features in the Jira system so we could get them on the backlog? I manage the backlog for the platform team, for example, in Alfresco, and it's interesting to see that stuff.
And no, I have not. I did not know. This is where I'm still somewhat of a novice Alfresco user. No, I definitely, I just, probably a mistake, but I presume that it was on the list.
What I would say, though, is that the reason we really don't open tickets is initially we sort of butted heads with Alfresco. We wanted a lot of capabilities that simply weren't available, and so we just started, customizing it on our own. And the roadmap never seemed to match our needs. In fact, it's actually quite interesting. Very few of Alfresco's customers are enterprise software companies. And I think that says something about enterprise software companies. They're, very demanding on very specific needs for the way this content is managed. So we ultimately just decided, for the most part, we would just sort of customize on our own, work through Riva solutions, and then we really haven't pushed features in Alfresco.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for attending. Appreciate it. Have good trips home when you go.